Chapter 581. The shocking and ugly unveiling of the Vermont imperial family, about the white stone and living golems. After the awakening of the monstrous Black Sea King, the empire is going through the darkest and most terrible spring in history. Now, there will be no one who doesn't know that the white stone Hiran had been holding was the Black Sea King. The fact is that Hiran had been watching the awakening of the white stone alone for a long time. Hiran has been wary that someone would covet the power of the uncontrollable monster and unleash a disaster on the world as it is now. This was revealed to be true when Haran's patriarch, Dante Nim, who recently declared the regency, made public the exclusive documents and records of Haran's patriarch, and Talaris and Dormanim, the hidden palace master, also revealed records about the white stone to emphasize Haran's innocence. Taking this opportunity, I would like to express my great gratitude as a human to Talaris Nim, who, despite being neutral, revealed the secret information to resolve the danger facing the entire world and devoted herself to subduing Gleek. To the former Emperor Emir Vermont, who was stoned to death by the people and the imperial family. Who would have thought that the imperial family would commit what Hiran was worried about? They even went so far as to sell the empire to Zippel to obtain the power of the white stone. Why were they so obsessed with the power of the white stone? Meanwhile, the empire has maintained a stable relationship through diplomacy with other giant forces, including Runkandle, although it is more friendly with Zippel. There was no reason for the emperor to be obsessed with the white stone, even sacrificing the safety of the empire's population in a move equivalent to gambling. Even if the imperial family managed to seize the white stone and harness its power, there was no guarantee that the empire could outsmart the Great Clan, and the world would be on the brink of a major war. At that time, of course, it was the people of the empire who suffered the most. However, it is presumed that Emir Vermont's obsession with the white stone is due to the living golem. Emir Vermont planned to use the power of the white stone to complete the research on the living golem that the imperial family was secretly investigating and mass-produce it. The evidence has been made public today. The person who presented the evidence was the 12th flag-bearer of Runkandle, Jean Runkandle Nim. As everyone knows, Jean has a history of revealing the truth about living golems during the incident of the Holy Kingdom in the past and informing the world about their harm and danger. This time, Jean Nim proved to be right. The imperial family's desire to mass-produce living golems is contaminating the world with chaos. Living golems are made from living creatures, including humans. Such cruel witchcraft as black magic, which had been severed by its horrific methods. The living golem, which the imperial family called the Demon Man, did not deviate from that method. Moreover, it was said that each of the demon men of the imperial family that Mr. Jean directly experimented with possessed a combat power superior to that of a 9-star knight and had the ability to super-regenerate. The imperial family wanted to achieve world hegemony by mass-producing thousands or tens of thousands of such demon men. Then there is a strange thing. If they wanted to achieve hegemony, the fact that they sold the empire to Zippel for the white stone doesn't explain it. Zippel attempted several negotiations with Jean Nim during the first battle of the Sword Emperor's castle. Zippel even offered to return the then-sealed Dante Nim to his original state and destroy the empire, if only Hiran handed over the white stone. Regarding this, Jean Nim said in an interview, "Maybe the emperor borrowed Zippel's power to get the white stone, produced demon men in mass, and then tried to betray Zippel. They would have judged that they had a chance of winning if they could mass-produce demon men even if they waged war against Zippel. Above all, the emperor knew exactly what the white stone was. Unlike us, Runkandle and Zippel, he knew from the beginning that it was Gleek, the king of chaos." According to Jean Nim's interview, the emperor coveted the white stone despite knowing everything and had a plan to betray Zippel. This reporter hopes that Jean Nim's opinion is not wrong, and once again, it's time for the entire empire, including the imperial family, to reflect on the value and righteousness that Hiran has upheld. Immediately, new articles with evidence that it was the bodies of the demon men began to be written and distributed. Members of the imperial family and aristocrats of the imperial faction who saw the article expressed their resentment. Imperial Chamberlain, Barkham Nim, are these recent newspaper articles really true? Please say something. Is it true that the former emperor knew the identity of the white stone from the beginning? So the imperial family condoned the tyrannical behavior of the emperor even after knowing that such a catastrophe could befall the world due to Gleek? Chief Chamberlain Barkham shook his head with a haggard face. No, Your Majesty. No, the former emperor. Your Majesty? What is this madman saying now? The former emperor never shared anything with the imperial family. Even I, the Chamberlain, knew no information about the demon men. Currently, there is a story that the living golem demon men, presented as evidence, belongs to the Imperial Guard. Among the grotesque masses of flesh revealed, the golden epaulets of the Imperial were seen, and the cape as white as blood-soaked snow. It was not an imitation. Please tell me about this as well. Is the demon man's corpse from the Imperial Guard? Reporters and people who had flocked to the Imperial Palace buzzed at hearing those words. It was absolutely unacceptable to use knights who had been loyal to the imperial family more than anyone as mere test subjects. We are still figuring out why the object of the Imperial Guards was mixed with that piece of meat, but it's a fabrication. Fabrication. Jean Runcandle Nim was the one who risked his life to inform us about the dangers of living golems during the incident of the Holy Kingdom. Even in this war, he helped Hyran without asking for anything, just out of loyalty. Why would someone like him manipulate evidence? If Jean and Dante Nim want to end the imperial family, they can do it by force. Dante Nim has already demonstrated his power in the square. On the other hand, what about the imperial family? It has nothing to do with the emperor. I don't know why the Imperial Guard's things are there. It's just words. Give a proper explanation. I'll stop here for today. Instead, within 3 hours, the imperial family will issue a statement and distribute articles to explain what happened. So please go. As Barkham said, 3 hours later, new reports arrived, and the imperial family issued a statement. There was nothing special to turn the situation around. All they could do was reiterate in more orderly phrases that they had nothing to do with it and didn't know. It wasn't any different for the imperial family to come out like this. It was because the public's angry sentiment was destined to fade away someday. Moreover, above all, the corpse of the demon man brought by Jean could not be conclusive evidence of solidarity between the imperial family and the emperor. This was because there were no documents or witnesses about those who participated in or contributed to the research on the demon man. It was argued that the epaulets and white coats like blood-soaked snow of the Imperial Guards were coincidences or fabricated through objects of Imperial Guards who died in this war. Except for Jean and Valeria, no one had seen the Imperial Guard in the Wantramo forest in September of last year. The Imperial family completely ignored the existence of Valeria Hister. As long as she was there, this kind of evasion would be useless. Meanwhile, Valeria, she has been using record magic on the corpses of the Demon Man, and she has known the area where the Demon Man Research Institute of the Imperial family is located. The Imperial family had boldly established and operated a laboratory in the capital of the empire, not on the periphery. And as soon as the announcement of the Imperial family statement came, Jin's faction's newsletters immediately revealed the location of the Research Institute. Of course, as soon as the war ended and the emperor died, the Research Institute was closed and all the staff fled. But they didn't have time to clean it up properly. It was not reasonable to blow it up because it existed in the middle of the empire, and above all, the imperial family did not have the will to completely destroy the laboratory. Research on demon men is now really the last string left to the imperial family. Anyway, they thought no one had been able to find out the location of the research center. So the imperial family had plans to reopen it once the world calmed down. Thanks to Jean receiving Valeria's location and revealing it, even that has now become nothing. I didn't know that you could find out the location of the Demon Man laboratory through the Demon Man's corpse. This dark under the lamp, these fools. They set up a research laboratory in the middle of the imperial capital, said Jean as he drank from the teacup in front of him. Valeria was sitting across from him. She arrived at Heron's second castle without a disguise, which meant that she now had some confidence in Jin's allies. In this war, Jean and his allies were fighting for the protection of the world, not for personal gain. That incident transmitted some kind of vibration to Valeria's dry and cold interior. I never thought people would trust you so much, Jean Runcandle. Originally, demon men and living golems are fundamentally different, but since you said this, no one says that an investigation is needed. Of course, the people have no choice but to do so, and the imperial family will say no, but there's no way. Now reporters, people, and even people from each faction are rushing to the laboratory, so they can't deny it any longer. The evidence we deliberately left will receive the angry people. The imperial family and its demon man researchers stole most of the important data even in the midst of an emergency. But they left relatively trivial documents in the laboratory, such as the list of participants and donors one by one. Jean intentionally left it in view of the people, and the documents had the names of numerous members of the imperial family written on them. Moreover, the demon man of the imperial family is of a different type than the old demon man of black magic. While Jean spoke with a bitter voice, Valeria nodded. Yes, I was able to find out by looking at the records of the demon man corpses. It is undoubtedly the demonization that the imperial family is investigating, but it is no different from experiments with living golems. Therefore, your claim that research on demon men is actually research on living golems is not false. Originally, demon men and living golems are classified based on whether a human body and a living creature are used or not. Demonization is magic, and living golems approach magical engineering. However, the demonization research that the imperial family was conducting had those two attributes at the same time. It's because the body of the first patriarch of Runcandle, Timar Runcandle, was used in the demonization. Chapter 582. Who are the other factions searching for Timar's tomb? Who do you think they are? Zippel. Correct. But that's not all. The Vermont imperial family is also searching for the tomb of the first patriarch of Runcandle. Their move has been exposed to them once. A conversation Jean had with Margiela when Kinslow arrived in Runcandle to offer Jean to join them. It was the first time Jean learned that Vermont was also seeking Timar's tomb during that visit. One cannot use the legacy Soderette left in Timar's tomb unless it is under the protection of shadows. Furthermore, all legacies discovered so far were already arranged by Soderette 1,000 years ago. Therefore, Zippel must prevent Jean and Runcandle from using the legacy. But in fact, Vermont has no reason to track Timar's tomb. At that time, Margiela had let him know that Vermont was tracking Timar's tomb and that they wanted a body, not a legacy. Jean didn't know what they were trying to do with Timar's body. However, after experiencing the demon men in the Wantaramo forest, he speculated on the possibility that they were looking for a way to complete the demon men. This ominous and terrible speculation eventually proved true. I don't know exactly when Vermont obtained Timar Runcandle's body. Maybe it's because it's a distant point that I can't confirm with my record magic right now. Or it could be Zippel's overwhelming influence manipulating Timar Runcandle's history. Valeria's speculation was correct. When she first got the demon man's corpse and used record magic, almost all the information was obscured. Due to Zippel's manipulation magic, which was erasing the history of Timar Runcandle, even the location of the research institute that had nothing to do with Timar was not revealed. However, the situation changed thanks to the weakening of Zippel's power of history by Gleek. From the demon man's corpse, records that had not been seen before began to appear. However, the power of history did not disappear completely, and it was 1,000 years ago when Vermont obtained a part of Timar's body. With Valeria's current abilities, it was impossible to confirm that time. I think they used only a part of his body, not his whole body. If it were whole, the demon man would have already been completed, and there would be no reason for Vermont to continue searching for his tomb. Crunch. Jin's eyes darkened upon hearing this. Crazy bastards. Were they not afraid of the consequences? Or did they think it was better to finish off the demon man, even if they had to deal with the consequences when Runcandle found out? In any case, it was a situation that made Jin's blood boil. Until now, it seems that not even Zippel knew the information that the imperial family had part of Timar's body. So he must have been sure they would never find out. If it weren't for Valeria, Jean would never have found out. The reason Jean was able to keep up with the imperial family was that they didn't assume the relationship between Jean and the Hister survivors. Are you going to attack the imperial family immediately? Valeria asked with a calm voice, but Jean felt she was quite concerned about the matter. It had been just over a month since the end of the Sword Emperor Castle War and Gleek's submission. Once Jean revealed the atrocities of the imperial family to his family and attacked the empire, this land would face another catastrophe. Valeria was worried about how many ordinary people would die for no reason. Jean found her concern both comforting and heartbreaking. Jean Runcandle, it seems like his expression is scrutinizing my thoughts again. While Valeria pondered, Jean shook his head. No, this is the land Ron Nim and Hyren fought so hard to protect. I can't turn the empire into a battlefield again so soon. Is that so? Besides, it's not appropriate for Runcandle to wage war right now. It's impossible to attack the empire without justification, so my family must disclose information about Timar to the public, which means Zippel will also know, and my family will have to deal with the empire and Zippel at the same time. Although he wanted to smash the entire imperial family immediately, the situation was not favorable. Even Dante hardly had a way to help Jean if Runcandle attacked the empire. The role of the Sword Emperor was to defend the empire. Now is the time for my people and me to monopolize the information and prevent the imperial family from blaspheming and humiliating Timar. That's a good choice. Did you know how to give compliments? Sometimes. I was silently worried that you might share my hard-won information with your clan. If Runcandle finds out about this, from then on, the matter related to Timar's body would be under your clan's jurisdiction, not yours, and it would also make it difficult for me to continue examining the records of the Demon Man's corpse. And weren't you worried that innocent people would die in another war? Valeria did not respond to that question and raised her teacup. Anyway, many things have changed since the end of the Chaos King. I begin to see clues by interpreting not only the Demon Man's corpse but also the recording devices of Soderette that you gave me. And it seems that the Runcandles have regained some of the power of the magic sword. Yes, the curse Zippel cast on Runcandle is fading. The same goes for the curse imposed on my ancestors. Even the Hister's history they erased has changed a bit. Valeria suddenly stood up and bowed her head to Jean. It seems I must express my gratitude. Jean barely managed to conceal his expression of bewilderment. I think it's better if you tell Sir Ron, not me. I plan to pass by the Sword Emperor Castle area before leaving. You talk as if you're leaving right now. Well, there's no need to be disappointed since we'll be seeing each other much more often from now on. There are more things to share between us, and we have more reasons to help each other. I intend to use Tychon occasionally to evade Zippel's pursuit in the future. I never gave you permission for that, but you've made a good decision. Valeria smiled at that remark. From their past lives, Jin's spirits would lift whenever she smiled like that. After the War of the Sword Emperor Castle, there were always Runcandle Guardian Knights near Tychon. Now, not even Runcandle could stand idly by watching over Tychon's fate, both for Jean and for the family. Except for the Temple of Succession, there was no safer place for Valeria than Tychon. Particularly since Zippel's pursuit had become more persistent lately. Most of her hideouts had been discovered or destroyed. If you treat me as an unwelcome guest, I'll find another place. Come often, even when you have no business. I'll try. By the way, I don't think I'll be seeing you from my end for a while. I'm planning to leave soon, once I'm done with some matters I have to attend to. The chaos. Is that it? At Valeria's response, Jean reflexively covered the back of his right hand. The black stain of the chaos from Gleek's abyss still remained. Even after Gleek's death, the traces of chaos enveloping Jean hadn't completely disappeared. It's not that the intense demonic heart was pressing against Jin's interior, but occasionally he felt a bit of demonic nature. And that demonic nature was slowly but steadily growing. If left unchecked, it could become as formidable as the experience of Gleek's abyss. Jean had already met with Holy Queen Lonnie. Even she couldn't heal the stains Gleek had left on Jin's body, meaning for now, there was no way. However, Jean remembered that the battle goddess's blood remaining in his body resisted the invasion of chaos. The Lafarosa siblings, especially the battle goddess sister, might be able to tell me how to do it. Jean planned to find a way to stop the demonic nature in Lafarosa. And it wasn't just Jean succumbing to the chaos invasion. The same phenomenon was happening to Rosa and Keliark, as well as some key figures from the two clans who participated in Gleek subjugation. While Jean was in La Ferosa, they would find a way to stop the demonization in the outside world. That's one thing, but now is the right time to train in my brother's land. Originally, I intended to go, but as both clans have weakened and mine has started to protect Tychon in earnest, I can return with a much lighter heart. Jean had already shared information about La Ferosa with Valeria. It was because it seemed her ability would be needed in the future to bring his brothers from the dead world of La Fersara to the mortal world. The punishment suffered by the tribe of legends was also intertwined with Zippel's history manipulation. I'll also try to find a way to cure your chaos. Thank you for doing so. Don't expect too much. It's really hard to look through chaos records. Oh, and before you go, show me that thing you mentioned earlier. The object Valeria was referring to was an unknown mechanical device Jean had obtained in the Soda Desert. Jean pulled out a mechanical device from his pocket and handed it to Valeria. It also included some blueprints of the battleship. You're asking for battleship blueprints too? You're pushing it. Is it impossible to create a complete version of the blueprint with record magic? Record magic isn't omnipotent either. If the designer of the blueprint is here, and their memory isn't intact, I can assist with restoration to a certain extent. But using just record magic to uncover the entire blueprint from just a part is impossible. Even if your record magic reaches perfect level, it might be possible for my clan at its best. A blue and transparent mana window floated in front of Valeria. The mana emanating from her extended over the mechanical device and the blueprints, inscribing characters onto the window. Valeria's expression didn't change as she looked at the window where the blueprint records were written. As expected, the blueprints can't be restored. However, the year of manufacture and the producer's name are mentioned. It was manufactured in 1775 by someone named Tingen Bauer. Tingen Bauer? It was the first time Jean had heard this name. He also recalled the names of the other participants, but they were all magical engineers belonging to Zippel. Then Valeria, who was looking at the records of the mechanical device, showed a look of astonishment. What's wrong? This is the key piece of the teleportation device you first saw in the Gaifa Islands. Likewise, it was made by Tingen Bauer. Wait, isn't that his real name? It's not that record magic couldn't reveal a person's pseudonym, but Valeria felt that a strange repellent power was preventing Tingen Bauer's true name from being revealed. That meant Tingen Bauer's history had also been manipulated by Zippel and that Tingen Bauer might be someone related to Hister. Valeria began to focus again. For some reason, she felt that his true name would appear if she lessened the repellent force a little. That intuition wasn't wrong, and after about 5 minutes, Valeria was able to find out what Tingen Bauer's real name was. Creator. Qual Ganesto, Tingen Bauer. As Jean saw the name, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. It was because he had seen someone with the surname Ganesto in Soderet's recording device. Chapter 583, Lokia Ganesto. One of the 10 great knights from 1,000 years ago, and one of the most powerful individuals in pure magic from Old Runcandle. Jean and Valeria had seen her in the recording left in Timar's fourth tomb. It's surprising that a key piece of the teleportation device is Ganesto. It's not a common surname. At least Jean had never known anyone with the surname Ganesto, neither in his previous life nor in the current one. Manipulating the history about the 10 great knights must have been the reason people stopped using the Ganesto surname itself. Tingen Bauer, it's very likely that the man named Qual Ganesto is a descendant of Lokia Ganesto. Looking at the records, I felt the reaction of the history manipulation. In an instant, several assumptions came to Jin's mind and all were bad. Lokia Ganesto, she betrayed ancient Runcandle, and her descendants have been using aliases and contributing to Zippel, or they have forgotten their grudge and become Zippel's subordinates because history has been erased, or Zippel tells his descendants the wrong story. As a result or something like that. In the recoding Lokia Ganesto, she was a cruel and cold character. She even seemed friendly with the witch Hilurim. Patriarch, no. Brother, I can't do this. I will meet the witch who is in the Black Sea. Lokia said that if she is the witch, she might have a way to stop Zippel's manipulation of history. The words spoken by Sarah Runcandle in the video recording from the third tomb. 1,000 years ago, when the war was in full swing and the history of the fairy tribe and Runcandle was being manipulated, Sarah heard Lokia's opinion and wanted to meet Halluram. Of course, it was not a matter of jumping to conclusions, because Jean doesn't know what happened 1,000 years ago. Above all, Qual was just a descendant of Lokia, not one of the 10 great knights of Runcandle. I need to find and meet that person named Qual Ganesto. You won't be able to determine his location from the plans and records left in the machine, right? Yes, the year of manufacture of the piece is 1780, the year you were born. The plan was made in 1775, and the teleportation device in 1780. Jean said he would have to find him and meet him, but in reality meeting Qual would be almost impossible. It was impossible for Zippel to neglect a magical engineer of that level. Surely, Qual is the best magical engineer of the moment. My mother said she had heard from the prophet that this machine would change the tide of war. The prophet was right, as the machine turned out to be part of a teleportation device. Furthermore, the prophet had told my mother that she could start production immediately of the fleet by complementing and strengthening the ship design. If so, the prophet could have the ability to perfect the machine as well. Only for efficiency, it would be better for him to contact the prophet immediately to know the details about it and proceed with the negotiations. In reality, Rosa intended to do just that. Originally, I planned to use them through the prophet. However, this time I have changed my mind by suspending Joshua as flag-bearer. I will suspend negotiations with the prophet. During that time, show that you have a better path than the prophet. Rosa did not specifically tell him the time period. However, Jean guessed that it would have taken longer than Rosa's original plan due to Gleek's submission. Currently, Rosa was in a disheartening state just to organize the family. Many family knights died in the war. Over 300 elite knights, including 5 black knights, were lost. Runcandle put a black helmet on high-performing knights every time a black knight retired or died. However, keeping 10 black knights like this has reached its limit, to the point that Mon, who was demoted to execution knight after the Soda Desert, was reinstated as a black knight. Furthermore, my mother will also have no choice but to be cautious due to the chaos invasion. If only the power of the family is lost, then Rosa is more likely to have advanced negotiations with the prophet. That's how she could quickly restore power, because Zippel is weak now and it's an opportunity to attack them. However, Rosa had no choice but to postpone negotiations, as she was now in a situation where she could not properly exert herself. For now, she had no choice but to negotiate with the prophet on the right terms. Production may have started in earnest since then, but it must be recently that the technology has developed to the point where it can be used in practice. Regardless of when it was available, Zippel probably wanted to reveal the fleet and teleportation device later. The reason they used the fleet as bait in the Soda Desert was to confirm the existence of the prophet in your family. Valeria returned the plans and the machine to Jean. She tried several times to obtain new information with the magic of the discs, but she got nothing. Now I really have to go. Whatever happens, I will send you a letter to Tychon if there are any new developments. Maybe sooner or later your sister will find a small clue about the 5th tomb of Timar. Are you talking about elder sister Luncia? No wonder, I heard that elder brother Dyphus was in charge of preventing chaos. Not elder sister Luncia. She's looking for Timar's tomb. It's surprising how useful she is to me. There may be information within Runcandle that you don't know. The 3rd flag-bearer is moving based on that. Valeria offered to shake Jin's hand. See you later. Take care. 2 days later, in an unexpected place, Jean was able to find clues about Qual Ganesto. Did you say Qual Ganesto's alias was Tinjin Bower? A hidden mansion within the hidden palace. Talaris, with a haggard face, asked Jean with wide eyes as soon as she heard the name. Do you know him? Neither Qual Ganesto nor Tinjin Bower are common names, especially when it comes to the magical engineer Tinjin Bower. I'm pretty sure he's someone I know. He's a magical engineering genius, huh? Among my lovers there were quite a few like that. Do you want me to get in touch with them? Son-in-law. Shortly after obtaining the machine, Jean also talked to Talaris about the need for an engineer. And surprisingly, she, Talaris, had a romance with a man named Tingen Bauer in her youth. He was my 77th lover. It was a lucky number, and I remember him very clearly for his unique personality. A cool guy who is the perfect definition of a nerd. Talaris Nim. Is there any way I can contact him now? I remember the house he lived in, but the chances of him still living there are low, right? A wooden cabin on the outskirts of Palin Kingdom. It must have been more than 30 years ago. Still, I'd like to go once. What kind of person was he? A small smile crossed Talaris's lips as she remembered her memories with Qual. It seems that her memories with him were not so bad. But when Talaris thought more deeply about him, her expression wrinkled. He was a bad boy. I didn't know there would be another human in the world who could leave me. Except for your father. Eh? Did my father leave you? Era, you're mistaken. I'm not talking about a relationship. Your father left me in the duels we had. Anyway, Tingen, he cut off his relationship with me then, saying he was busy with some research, and I haven't heard from him since then. Anyway, I'll give Mort to you until my daughter comes back. So go see the house where he lived. All right. Huang Dash. As soon as Jean replied, Mort appeared in front of Talaris and let out a cry. There were black chaos stains all over Mort's body. However, unlike Jean and other infected, Mort was slowly purifying the chaos with his energy. Anyway, my daughter is too lazy to become a noble. Mother. It was the first time Jean had met Cirrus since the war. Lady Cirrus. So, Jean thought she would be angry with him, as he was responsible for Talaris suffering severe internal injuries and losing most of her powers. Jean. However, contrary to what Jean expected, Cirrus did not show anger towards Jean. Rather, she looked at the stains left on Jin's hand back and showed a hint of concern for him. Are you all right? Yes, I'm still fine. Cirrus silently looked at the back of Jin's hand for a while. Jean coughed because the situation was somewhat awkward. Cirrus used to get angry every time Talaris often got involved in matters related to Runcandle and Zippel and lost something because of Jean. However, she wasn't angry with Jean, but rather hated the fact that the major forces looked down on the Hidden Palace. She had long recognized Jean as an ally. Only for a while did she act harshly, with some kind of blow and strange competitive spirit. Specifically, even if it wasn't for Jean, Talaris herself had to intervene anyway to fulfill her secret mission. Therefore, Cirrus understood that, thanks to Jean, the Hidden Palace only suffered this damage. Talaris had told her that without Jean, she would have to break Elona's seal. If that woman, Elona, were freed from her seal, the Hidden Palace would have had to remain isolated from the world for a long time until it disappeared. Moreover, Jin's help didn't end there. Cirrus's gaze landed behind Talaris. She could see that Elona's Zippel seal was mixed with shadow energy. Black Dragon Misha. As soon as the subjugation was over, Talaris required her, and she came here to help maintain the seal. Elona could be freed if she didn't, so Misha poured all her strength into the seal. Because of this, Misha was in a state of binding by Elona's seal. Misha's current state was no different from that of a statue. Jean followed Cirrus and observed Elona's seal and Misha. Before entering the seal, Misha told Jean that she was fine, but it was natural for them to feel sorry for her. Thank you for your concern, Lady Cirrus. I'm sorry I couldn't help. Are you two in a good mood? Daughter, go on a date with my son-in-law to Palin Kingdom right now. When Jean explained about Qual, Cirrus nodded. Chapter 584, Tower of Stories. There was a laboratory in the middle of the Empire. Crunch. Octavia gritted her teeth. She had her entire body wrapped in mana bandages, as if she hadn't fully recovered from the aftermath of the war yet, and several maintenance devices were connected to her back. The visible black spots through the bandages were thick. In addition to the Chaos Invasion, the Demon God Orb had subjected her to super regeneration, so for now, she had to use a maintenance device every day. The Imperial family, those wicked bastards' guts are bigger than I thought. Isn't the Imperial capital a place where our magicians come and go every day? Cadden, beside her, also calmed his anger. Hito lit a cigarette with a calm face. He was only keeping his composure because he really didn't think anything of it, but to Octavia and Cadden, it didn't seem so. He gave the illusion of considering the situation with coldness and superhuman patience. It's embarrassing, but it's fortunate that the imperial family still has a trump card. So calm down, Cadden Nim. The same goes for you, Spectre Commander. At Hito's words, Cadden and Octavia cleared their throats in embarrassment. Hito Nim is right. I've shown a shameful side. Yes. Those bastards are cornered, so they won't hesitate to approach us again. The power structure of the world changed after the War of the Sword Emperor Castle. Now, it has come to the era where it is impossible to say for sure that Zippel is the only clan at the top. Of course, they didn't completely lose their position as the #1 clan, but the major powers of the world don't know the exact situation of their respective damages. They can only assume it's beyond their imagination. Therefore, the two great clans had to watch each other's backs and strengthen their forces as soon as possible, at any cost. Even in Runcandle, Siren is still alive and kicking. It was a foreseeable fact that he had entered the kingdom of the 5 Black Sea Kings, but Zippel had to assume the possibility of him returning to the continent at any time, and the existence of the Prophet was also a cause for concern. In that sense, Zippel had no choice but to covet the demon men technology of the imperial family. In any case, the imperial family couldn't conspire with Runcandle. It was because Jean was there, and even though Rosa ignored him and asked for an alliance first, it was an unattractive offer for the imperial family because Runcandle wouldn't have any expert magic engineers. Above all, the imperial family has maintained a closer relationship with Zippel than with Runcandle. Although it seemed they had slapped each other on the back once in the War of the Sword Emperor Castle, they were now in a position where they needed each other. You're right. The tail cut of the imperial family failed because of the 12th flagbearer of Runcandle, so they have no choice but to rely on us. Any negotiation can be carried out on favorable terms. It's not something to be angry about, but rather something to be glad about. Zippel didn't exactly know the power of the demon men. It was highly likely that the information spread by Jin's press, claiming that the demon men had super regenerative abilities and a power superior to that of a 9-star knight, was an exaggeration. Still, they thought there must be a reason why the imperial family dared to deceive them. As for combat power, they can simply look at the samples during negotiations. It's not too late to punish them after they lose their abilities and the clan recovers. But one strange thing is, how did demons know the 12th flagbearer of Runcandle the location of the laboratory? It's impossible for our clan to have less intelligence than him. Octavia nodded at Hito's words. I think it's because the survivor of Hister is with the 12th flagbearer. From the moment the 12th flagbearer destroyed the Patriarch's grand magic in the war, it has been confirmed that he and the record magician are together. The second version of the Demon Empress, in the War of the Sword Emperor Castle, Jean easily dissipated that magic as if he already knew it. Octavia's gaze rested on another maintenance device behind her. There was Baradin Zippel sealed there trying to escape. He hasn't regained consciousness even once since the beginning of the War of the Sword Emperor Castle. Even Octavia and Baradin weren't the only ones helped by the maintenance device. Keliark is also within one of the maintenance devices on the top floor of the Tower of Stories. In other words, Zippel was facing its worst moment in 1,000 years. It was when Keliark finally declared that she would personally find the survivors of Hister, but Misha the Black Dragon and the survivor of Hister were also very lucky. First of all, we'll have to wait for the Imperial family to contact us. And when that kid wakes up, I'll have to ask him to meet with the 12th flagbearer of Runcandle. Octavia, no matter how close the 12th flagbearer of Runcandle is to Baradin, do you think he's going to spit out information about Hister? There's nothing wrong with trying, Cadden. Anyway, the 12th flagbearer will also be curious about Baradin's condition, so he'll never avoid the meeting. As the conversation progressed like this, Hito was a little perplexed. It was because before attending this meeting, he received a request from Sandra Zippel. Surely Auntie will make Baradin meet with Jean when he wakes up. Hito tells them, then I will go with him. No, Mississippi. Why? Miss, you are actually committing an act of treason by meeting with the 12th flagbearer. So far, the patriarch has turned a blind eye. But if you continue... Oh, I also have an idea. Have I heard that that record magician is with him? Then Auntie wouldn't be able to send Raiden with a manipulated mind, so she will have some anxiety. Because she won't know what Raiden will say. I'll take on that surveillance role. From my point of view, I think your mouth is more of a problem, Mississippi. Anyway, tell her that. End of story. Sigh. Hito let out a deep sigh along with the smoke from his cigarette. Inevitably, he finally rhymed. Spectre Commander, how about we send young Miss Sandra with the young patriarch? If anyone else had said it, Octavia would have considered it unworthy of hearing. Why do you think so? Hedonim. I believe we should keep an eye on the young patriarch. What memories he regained or lost due to this attempted mind control. We can't figure it out quickly, and there is a possibility that the survivor of Hister will check if the young patriarch's mind was manipulated. That makes sense. But for that kind of role, Sandra is another time bomb, so a more reliable person would be better for this role. If you send the right person, it will be difficult to avoid the suspicions of the 12th flag bearer. Naturally, the scope of the conversation between them will also be narrowed. Hito felt like something was missing in what he was saying, but he thought it was better to deal with Sandra's uproar later. But surprisingly, Octavia and Cadden readily accepted his opinion. I prefer to do as you say. I've heard there's a strange atmosphere between the 12th flag bearer of Runcandle and Sandra. That might help again. And even if she wasn't the record magician, the 12th flag bearer had an AZ mill contractor. Recognizing mind manipulation is not a difficult job. The strange atmosphere was Sandra's unilateral love attack, and the 12th flag bearer would never lose his cool over something like that. But Hito remained silent. All right, Hedonim. As soon as Baradin wakes up, tell Sandra to get ready. Hito would have felt more comfortable if they had rejected him. Hito simply nodded with an uncomfortable smile. Of course, Talaris, she had not expected at all that her 77th lover from 30 years ago would still be living in a wooden cabin on the outskirts of Palin Kingdom. Giving them to Mort was like expecting her daughter and son-in-law to have a date. A young man and woman, a remote country, an old log cabin that may still be standing. Few conditions are better for love to happen. Boom! The landscape that appeared when the pure white dimensional portal opened was very romantic, as Talaris had hoped. In the dense forest without sunlight, the curved trees formed a semi-spherical space, and in the center, an old log cabin stood quaintly. It looks remote. To think that the log cabin Talaris Nim talked about really exists. Ha, Mort. My mother's affairs are your fault too. If my mother didn't have the ability to move through dimensions, her lover count would have been halved. Bo! Bong! Anyway, I can't see anything particularly damaged here, so we can take a look and return soon. Yes, Lady Cirrus. Contrary to Talaris's expectations, the two seemed like people who came to do work, looking straight ahead. If I had known it would be so easy to get clues about Qual Ganesto, I would have asked Valeria to come with me here. If there were record magic, she would have been able to easily look at the records Qual left here without having to search every nook and cranny of this uninhabited place. If he didn't find more information, Jean thought it would be a good idea to come back with Valeria later. However, as soon as the two entered the log cabin, they could find traces of people living there. There was a strong smell of cigarette smoke in addition to a slight smell of food, as if they had eaten a few hours ago. There were so many cigarette butts and empty bottles on the floor that there was no room to step. Are people living here? It's definitely not the person called Qual Ganesto. It should be good if it were Qual Ganesto, but it would be a bit awkward because it was so easy to find him. Don't think so. Maybe it's someone who still works as an engineer for Zippel. So there's no way they're living in a place like this without an escort. But let's see who it is. Mort, look around you. Hide and move. Cirrus, who was talking to Mort through the window, suddenly stopped speaking. It was because she could see a person walking from behind Mort there. He had a scruffy beard, disheveled hair, and had the typical look of a bandit. But upon seeing him, Cirrus abandoned any expectation that he was Qual. It was because her mother's taste was nowhere to be seen in his appearance. But the next moment, he shouted at the two and pulled something from his arms. A small mana cannon? Kikik, Kiririk dash. The mana cannon he pulled out looked small at first, but as he moved the parts, it quickly transformed into a medium-sized or larger one. Who are you? Chapter 585. Usually, after aiming a gun at someone, if you ask who they are, you expect an answer. Pew dash. However, the man in front of them belonged to the category of individuals who renounced that stereotypical form of intimidation, and instead, he was seen firing a preloaded hand cannon. Yet, what was even more shocking to Jean than being attacked by a cannon, and it showing much greater power than his expectations, was the target the man had aimed at. It wasn't just Jean and Cirrus, but the cabin that housed the lingering memories of that remote place, where he had been cooking and eating for over 30 years. Pew pew. Cirrus reacted faster than Jean and stepped forward to deflect the bullets. A wall of ice extending from her grip covered the front of the cabin, blocking the bullets. Cirrus gritted her teeth at the powerful blast hitting the transparent ice wall. Her eyes quickly darkened with murderous intent. You trash of a man. Lady Cirrus? You can't kill him. I believe he's Qual Ganesto, or at least has something to do with him. I haven't heard of a portable hand cannon of this level before. Bang, bang, bang. The hand cannon continued firing as Jean spoke. In a matter of seconds, the entire scene was obscured by black smoke. Then let me cut off both his arms. That sounds more fitting for elder sister Yona than for you, Lady Cirrus. Let's make him surrender and decide what to do with him afterward. Jean leaped out of the ice wall, creating a sword wind as he swept through the nearby smoke. Jean encountered an unexpected sight. Have these weapons been installed already? Unidentified blue rods protruded among the strangely bent trees. In between, there were objects resembling muzzles and cannons. The ground, once covered in weeds, had turned into a flat metal surface. The intricate lines on the ground emitted a vibration implying it could transform into traps similar to the defensive equipment of the fortress. All of this had changed in less than 10 seconds. As surprising as when I met Lady Amela. Back then, Amela's murky chaos energy amplified, but the changes brought about by the man were solely the result of pure magical engineering. As expected, the trap was activated as soon as Jean stepped onto the metal ground. Lines extended and sharp hooks protruded from within, latching onto his ankles. Of course, the engineering was impressive. Probably not for an ordinary martial artist, though. Not even a 7-star warrior or above would have been able to withstand some of the traps from that man. But the opponents were Jean and Cirrus. The hooks broke without leaving a scratch on Jin's shadow energy armor. It wasn't to the point where he couldn't avoid it, but he deliberately opened the armor to test the power. Not bad to feel my ankles weighing me down. It would be quite effective if installed in Taiken. For Jean, who had activated his shadow energy armor, it was of a considerable level, and it had a cutting force that could easily sever even the ankles of well-trained knights as if cutting through butter. Next, a cannonball grazed Jin's back. Similarly, Jean felt satisfied by the slight sensation of pain in his lower back. The bright net that attacked him next was also inevitable. The net is so tough that it's hard to cut even with an 8-star strike. This would be useful too. Rip. Jean smiled as he tore the net with his hands. In a way, Jean had already decided to recruit that man. Whether he was Qual or not, regardless of his personality or intentions. There was no need to worry about those things because he had the ability. It was unacceptable for such a person to belong to the enemy, especially in times like these. If the man was human trash, he would force him to work. If he was a man he could communicate with, he would be generous, and if he was loyal to Zippel, he would break his spirit. He was by no means a person to be in Zippel. And suddenly, a thought crossed Jin's mind. What if that man could mass-produce such objects? If so, wouldn't the era of knights come to an end? The next moment, Jean felt even more of that bittersweet sensation. Something is obstructing aura concentration. It wasn't at a critical level. Originally, 100 auras would gather even if he used his energy as naturally as breathing, but now it condensed to about 95. However, this was only when relying on the general standard of a martial artist, because Jin's aura affinity far exceeded the general standard. Even this would be fatal for an ordinary martial artist. And assuming Jin was also dealing with a person equivalent to a superhuman, it was a dangerously close phenomenon. Cirrus also had a stiff expression, as if she sensed the same thing. There would be no problem in subduing the man, but as a warrior it was inevitable to feel surprised. She quickly rolled her eyes to find the presumed causative element. The rods emerging through the gaps in the trees were the cause. The strange energy emanating from the rods was disrupting the flow of aura. The rods only affected aura. The mana and shadow energy that Jin tested were not hindered by this flow. For a moment, a chill ran down his spine. If that man was Qual Ganesto, then the reason he was crafting that rod artifact would be to aid Zippel in facing Runcandle. Like the blueprints of the production ship and the teleportation device. Verification of the man's magical engineering artifacts was complete. Jin burst his aura in an instant, diverting the traps and projectiles that were about to envelop him. As he rushed forward, the ground he stepped on exploded, sending debris flying. It wasn't the traps that exploded, but rather the explosion occurred. Due to the discharge of his aura, Sigmund's blue lightning energy fiercely rebounded against the man's artifacts. Most of the artifacts were instantly disabled or destroyed, but the rod remained steadfast, apparently on a completely different level among his creations. Nevertheless, Jin had no intention of breaking the rods. It would be foolish to damage something so precious. Tinjin Bauer. Before Tinjin could even blink, Jin's voice, which had been in front of him, resonated from behind. Of course, being a person capable of fortifying the entire space in an instant, the man also wore a plethora of defensive artifacts to protect himself. But Jin's figure was visible from the front, his voice heard from behind, and even before he finished uttering his words, a sword pierced through the man's left side. Moreover, as soon as the shield on the left side broke, the same happened on the right. The blue lightning energy spreading like light struck all around before he could realize. "Who are you? How do you know me and found this place?" As the man admitted he was Tinjin, Jin smiled inwardly again. The distressing feeling that things were going too well had completely disappeared. Only the thought remained that he had struck gold in the middle of a jackpot, and he shouldn't waste it. Some kind of headhunter? When the shields all exploded at once, Tinjin's body was thrown backward. Normally, with such a jolt, the impact would reach the human inside the shield. He told me not to kill him, yet he's treating him more violently. Wait, did he completely eliminate only the shields? However, Jin's attacks surprisingly only completely destroyed the shield, and only thanks to the wind spell did Tinjin's body float and avoid damage. Jin gently held Tinjin before he could slam against the hard metal floor. Cirrus watched him and inwardly clicked her tongue because she felt the gap again. Jin Runcandle always goes far ahead every time we meet. Cirrus no longer resented Jin's achievements being much faster than hers. She genuinely cared for him and, above all, knew how he had gained that power and what paths he had walked. Somehow, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. "I can't afford to harm your precious body, Tinjin Bauer. No, Qual Ganesto." This time, Tinjin felt a shiver down his spine at the mention of his name. As far as Tinjin knew, there wasn't a single person in the world, except himself, who knew that name. Not even the Patriarch of Zippel, where he had worked until recently. "What did you just say?" Qual Ganesto, descendant of Lokia Ganesto, one of the 10 great knights of ancient Runcandle. Judging by the reaction, I'm pretty sure it's you. A flash of light burst from Qual's handle. It was an artifact similar to Tsenmi's flash cannon that obscured the opponent's vision. Jin raised a handful of shadow energy and completely swallowed the light from the artifact. Long ago, he had surpassed the level where such a trick worked against him. "I am Jin Runcandle, the current 12th flag-bearer of Runcandle and the rightful heir of the ancient Runcandle. What the hell are you suddenly talking about? That's what I want to ask. Why is the descendant of the 10 great knights working for Zippel?" Jin sincerely didn't believe it. To be honest, If the family they originally dedicated themselves to didn't protect them or remember them after 1,000 years, they would have no choice but to betray to survive. Hey, do you think it makes sense? Even a passing dog or blade of grass would laugh at that claim. Without delving into events from 1,000 years ago, you have made numerous contributions to Zippel. That alone should be reason enough for you to die by Runcandle's sword. As you said, I am a headhunter. Whether that turns into a recruitment or a true beheading depends on you. Ha, in that case, it's a refusal. Kill me if you can. You surrender too easily. You just attacked me a moment ago. How many skills do you think you need to confirm from me? How interested do you think I am? You'll never be able to kill me. Didn't you just say a moment ago that you wouldn't harm my precious body? That's right. So I'm thinking about how we can work together a little better. Forced labor is always painful, isn't it? Judging by the way you live, it seems there's something wrong between Zippel and you. As the saying goes, all that glitters is not gold. Do you want to have a conversation with me? Jean nodded. Not like you, who attacked me suddenly with a mana cannon. Let me burn a few cigarettes and we'll talk again. Whatever you want. After smoking 5 cigarettes in a row, Tinjin said, I'll consider leaving this cabin if you answer some questions and meet the conditions I propose. Chapter 586. Jean smiled to himself. Although Qual started shooting from the beginning, it was the moment when it was revealed that Qual was not entirely incapable of conversing. Moreover, isn't it Jin's specialty to answer questions and align with the conditions the other party desires? Let's start with the question. How did you find out I was here? I found out from Talaris Nim. Tal-Eris? Tinjin showed a surprised expression upon hearing her name. It was as if he heard the name for the first time. At first, both Jean and Cirrus wondered if Qual and the Tinjin mentioned by Tal-Eris were different people. However, after a moment, he startled and said, Ah, Tal-Eris. Yes, Tal-Eris Kendorma. Wasn't it Indorma? Indorma? Was it? Right? There was a woman like that. Not only Jean, but Cirrus also couldn't help but be amazed at Qual's reaction, whose eyes deepened as he recalled his old memories. In particular, Cirrus felt a kind of fresh shock beyond discomfort. He never wanted to, but Cirrus had firsthand dealt with quite a few of the many humans who had been lovers of Tal-Eris. They clung to her to the point of being pathetic. In severe cases, they even threatened to end their lives if she didn't meet them. But Tal-Eris never approached those former lovers. Cirrus had even dealt with those who, in some severe cases, insisted on tarnishing the image of the hidden palace by spreading exaggerated rumors about Tal-Eris. Like when Jean was a cadet intermediate, Cirrus went to Mummet to remove Talaris's 307th boyfriend, Alcaro Chender. Jean and Cirrus first met there. Did he even forget my mother? What kind of human is he? No, is that possible? Even if they weren't lovers. Once you saw Tal-Eris, she was an unforgettable figure. First of all, the public didn't even have the chance to see her, and her unique white-silver hair and her aura, characteristic of the Indorma bloodline, emitted an inexplicable mystique that no one else could feel. But it seemed that Qual really had forgotten her. However one looked at it, he wasn't pretending to have forgotten her. No, didn't you already know? Until now, it was full ice energy that blocked your bullets. Full ice energy emitted a completely different sensation from ordinary ice-type magic. However, Qual clapped as if he had just remembered. Mort was even here. That's right. Now that I think about it, that friend is using the same power as Tal-Eris Kendorma. Indorma, Cirrus shouted. Qual kept looking melancholic, whether he said it or not. At that moment, Cirrus was about to lose her nerves. Oh, Mort, it's been a long time, my friend. So you must be her daughter. Nice to meet you. I'm Tinjin Bauer. Get lost. And you must be her son-in-law or a future son-in-law. Now that I think about it, I heard there are marriage talks between the 12th flag-bearer of Runcandle and the lady from the Hidden Palace. How is Tal-Eris? Before Jean could choose what to respond, Qual shook his head. No, well, forget it. I'm not interested in past love affairs. Ha! Amazing. Aren't your eyes too deep for that kind of thing? Jean wanted to say that, but he stayed silent, looking at Cirrus. Well, anyway, if Talaris told you about this place, it makes sense. She remembered this place. Qual seemed to have many questions about Talaris, but he held back. Cirrus stepped away from them, thinking that if he watched Qual any longer, she might draw her sword. Jean gave Qual a moment to gather his thoughts. A few minutes later, Qual's eyes returned to being cautious. However, it was much milder than the first time. Next question. It was explained how you found out about this wooden cabin and Tingenbauer's alias. But how do you know my real name? My informants found out. I'm telling you beforehand. If you play a joke or tell a lie, the conversation ends there. You're strict. Do you think Runcandle's intelligence is superior to Zippel's? Moreover, you are still just a 12th flag-bearer. Your intelligence doesn't come from Runcandle but from the collective abilities of the Vamal Alliance. It's hard to believe you found out my real name to that extent. Qual's words contained information. Didn't even Zippel know Tingenbauer's real name? Qual Ganesto? How did you know something even Zippel didn't know? He seemed to ask that. It's true that my informants found out your real name. My family didn't even know of your existence, let alone that I was looking for you. Jean couldn't classify Valeria as a simple informant, but, broadly speaking, she could also be classified as an informant of the Vamal Alliance, so he wasn't lying. Qual stared at Jean for a while without saying anything. I don't think you're lying. That prolonged eye contact was Qual's way of detecting lies. It seemed there was no proof, but since they had surpassed it, it was fine for Jean. I also have some things I want to ask. Do it after I finish my questions. Why is Zippel's engineer, especially a crucial figure for the development of the teleportation device and mass-produced battleships, trapped in a place like this? Moreover, why isn't there any magician coming to escort him? Not even to this point. Qual didn't really hate Jin's behavior, ignoring his words and asking questions. He thought this aspect was better than the powerful ones from Zippel, who usually showed a servile appearance by carefully looking after themselves. Perhaps this small favor was the price for helping him remember a long-forgotten past love. But Qual vehemently denied it. Even those rods you made seem to have the ability to interfere with the concentration of warriors' auras. No matter how I think about it, it's strange that an engineer of your caliber is left aside in a place like this. Left aside? Did you say I was left aside? Ha! You don't know me well. No one can contain me. For some reason, at that moment, Jean thought of the black dragon he knew well. It reminds me of Muraken. These kinds of individuals, whether described positively as simple and unique or negatively as somewhat foolish and arrogant, sometimes showed signs of being obsessed with something. Jean hoped Qual also had those kinds of elements. Zippel released you, is that what you're saying? I was trying to be nice, but you keep talking about things that scratch my pride. Zippel? They only cared about my skills and took me in for a while. I've never been affiliated with them. Jean had a rough idea. It's likely that Zippel was unable to recklessly deal with this eccentric individual. This person seemed to be someone who, even if slightly offended, would never cooperate. So they had no choice but to play along. Nothing was known about this arrogant engineering genius, Tingenbauer. If Jean hadn't obtained some mechanical device blueprints and battleship plans from the Soda Desert, and if Valeria hadn't been there, and if he hadn't had any connection with Talaris, he probably wouldn't have found this place. Even if he had found it, it would have been much later. Additionally, Qual had the ability to confront quite a few people, and Zippel suffered from a severe energy shortage after the Sword Emperor Castle War. But still, it's insufficient to explain why Qual Ganesto has been sidelined. Maybe it's because the name Ganesto is still unfamiliar to Zippel. Mind manipulation. Suddenly, one of Zippel's spells came to Jin's mind. At least from what he had seen so far, Qual didn't seem to be affected by mind manipulation. His mental control was not yet perfect, so if we exclude that, things fit a little. And why was Qual working with Zippel in the first place? Although he wasn't from an academy, and his fame wasn't widespread, it was evident that Qual Ganesto was a genius engineer of another caliber. Therefore, it was very possible that Zippel took notice of him because of his exceptional abilities. He's not someone who can be easily recruited. If he only needed advanced engineering equipment or resource support, he probably would have turned to the academy first. Zipple must have made an attractive offer to Quall. To redeem himself, he's going to put Zipple as an enemy for a while. Jean reached that conclusion. Maybe you were working with Zipple because there was something that attracted you? Think what you want about that part. Jean thought it meant yes. Originally, upon hearing Quall's response, Jean would have felt a bit stuck, because the Vamal Alliance and Runcandle had no alternative offer against teleportation devices and mass-produced battleships. But now, the situation was different. There's a multi-purpose mana-spraying cannon, something Amela claimed was a masterpiece of ancient artifacts. And they also have some of the battleship plans and teleportation device parts. In particular, the parts and plans were clearly a masterpiece among masterpieces even for Quall. Let me ask you directly, Quall Ganesto. If I could make you an offer as attractive as Zipple's, would you consider working with me? That's not possible. Do you want to hear my proposal? You said you would consider leaving the cabin if I answered your questions and if I fulfilled your conditions. Is that correct? Although I said that, I don't really have any expectations. If you're thinking of moving me through torture or something, feel free to do so. However, by doing so, you will become the villain who will set back the progress of this world for centuries. Jean didn't respond to that and instead pulled out a mechanical device from his pocket, presenting it to Quall. I thought you'd want to complete this thing, but it seems I was mistaken. Then Quall's eyes widened as if they were about to pop out. What? Why do you have it? Jean couldn't help but smile once again. Chapter 587. Quall reflexively grabbed the machine, and Jean slightly dodged his touch and tilted his head. You shouldn't snatch someone else's belongings like that. How did you get it? Because I acquired it from Zipple. Ha! Zipple, those bastards. Did they let you take it? You talk as if there was a reason it belonged to Zipple. Quall had been reacting violently all this time, but the fact that his face was now red and blue as if he were about to explode was truly furious. Even his eyes reddened quickly, and his hands and feet trembled. These bastards. How dare they deceive me? Did Zipple deceive you? Jean narrowed his eyes. He needed to hear more of the story, but Quall's resentment towards Zipple was definitely advantageous for Jean. It's not from Zipple, it's mine. You need to learn another lesson about handling possessions. Give it back to me. You probably don't think of Runcandle as a family that acquires something and then easily gives it away. It wasn't just a comment to provoke Quall. The mechanical device and the blueprint of the battleship, how much sacrifice had Jean made in the Soda Desert to obtain these 2 items? He had acquired them with the death of the Black Knight Jane. For Jean, it was distasteful that Quall dared to claim ownership of an object in front of him. It's hard to imagine the value of Quall, so Jean refrained from revealing his murderous intent. If it had been anyone else, they would have been immediately accused of a crime. Fine, I admit it. However, I would like to know where and how you obtained that item. Why should I? Did you say you wanted my ability? That's another matter. If you want to hear the background, this time, try telling me something that captures my interest. Quall gritted his teeth. The initiative had changed in an instant. He had never before experienced a loss of control like this. Powerful individuals, including Zipple, who accidentally discovered his abilities, had usually resorted to senseless threats and persuasion, attempting to manipulate him with empty promises. As long as he had the ability as an engineer, Quall had always been the strong one, except for this moment. It seemed these things were more valuable to Quall than he had expected. Jin's thoughts about Quall's desire as an engineer to complete his masterpiece turned out to be accurate. Therefore, the acquisition was no different from the fact that it was already half-finished. What remained to be seen was how cooperative Quall would be. Jean Runcandle, you said it was a teleportation device, right? That item is not a teleportation device, but an instant summoning tool. It's completely different from teleportation. What's the difference? Teleportation has weather limitations like transfer gates, but this device doesn't have that, and it can transcend time and space. Hearing Quall's response, Jean couldn't help but widen his eyes. If it could transcend time and space, perhaps it could be the technology that could bring his brothers from La Ferosa. Of course, Jean couldn't completely trust Qual's words. It could be just an absurd story or an exaggerated interpretation driven by hope. However, until recently, space-time devices were considered impossible technology. Jean hadn't heard of such technology even in his past life. Is that all? Yes, for now. Now it's your turn to respond. It seems like a tug-of-war between lovers. I got the items in the soda desert. I acquired both the mechanical device and the blueprint of the vault of the second magic tower. It's strange that you didn't know. Weren't you working for Zipple when the incident in the soda desert happened? Humph. Was that why you repressed your murderous intent as soon as I claimed ownership? You must have made many sacrifices. That's true, but it's impressive that you noticed. I apologize for it. The device obviously belongs to you. This time, Jean liked Qual's attitude. Despite being somewhat eccentric and flamboyant, Qual at least seemed to have a basic understanding. For a while, the two remained silent, organizing their thoughts. Qual was the one who broke the silence. There's something you've misunderstood. To be precise, I didn't create that item. Jean had no choice but to accept Qual's words as lies. The fact that Qual was the creator of the machine and the blueprints had already been revealed by Valeria's record magic. So, who created it? Lokia Genesto. What? Lokia Genesto. The mechanical device wasn't made by me. It was created by my distant ancestor. The space-time device I created through him is nothing more than an attempt to restore objects from that era. If what Qual said was true, then the space-time device was created 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, Runcandle and Zipple possessed much greater power than now, and it was true just by observing the fact that they often encountered relics called masterpieces with performance far superior to advanced technology. It wasn't entirely implausible that the creator, revealed by record magic, was Qual. Since he improved an existing object, he could also be considered a creator. Above all, the manipulation of the history of the 10 Great Knights, including Lokia Genesto, had only faded slightly, but it was still in effect. Is the blueprint also made by Lokia Genesto, not by you? If the blueprint you have is on paper, then yes, I made it. But even that is a restoration using relics left by my ancestors. Like the space-time device, it's crude compared to the original that existed 1,000 years ago. It was the first time Jean had heard this information. Jean pretended to know that the original was in the form of a tablet, but Qual burst into laughter. No matter how high you fly or crawl, you couldn't have stolen that, because that item is in the first magic tower, the Tower of Stories. Is the original blueprint also originally yours? No, it would have been good if it were. It belonged to Zipple long before. It's different from the parts that were always in my possession until I started investigating. My informant said that construction of the blueprints began in 1775, and the machine was manufactured in 1780. You have an impressive informant, but it's very strange. As far as I know, when my research began, only Keliark, Cadden, and Octavia were in Zipple. Qual narrowed his eyes as if guessing something. Now I understand. Your so-called informant, is it a survivor of Hister? Record magic. If not, it's information you would never know. Unless Keliark Zipple gave it to you. Jean didn't answer and looked at Qual's expression. There seemed to be a burning desire in his dark eyes. Furthermore, my real name. That doesn't even suppose Keliark could know it. Unless it's record magic, he'll never know. That person must have seen Genesto's name on the device through record magic. The fact that there is a survivor of Hister has been known among the major forces for a long time. And the fact that he is with Jean has been noticed to some extent by the two major clans recently. It was perhaps natural for Qual to make such an analogy. Are you going to say it's an exaggeration? It depends on the reasons you think so. I've lived my whole life under the name Tinjin Bauer. Until recently, I didn't know my real name, Qual Genesto. After the world was died in chaos. Unless it's record magic, what else could have revealed it? Only a month ago, there was a problem with manipulating history in the name of Genesto. The weakening of Zipple's power caused by Gleek was causing a chain reaction between Jean and Qual. And neither Jean nor Qual knows it. It's not the first time Zippel's history manipulation has gone wrong. Even in the era when Qual was born, and during the lives of his other ancestors, there were times when the manipulation weakened. In particular, Genesto's history manipulation was often problematic. It's a shame you didn't know Kellyark didn't know your name. Yes, the Hister survivor is with me. It wasn't a situation to continue hiding. Jean continued to observe the desire reflected in Qual's eyes. Qual is a descendant of Lokia Genesto, and he is the world's best engineer. And what he desired most was not wealth, power, or personal success, but to restore and complete technology. Therefore, the ability to use record magic, which only Hister could use, was more essential for Qual than anything else. The conditions I was going to mention to leave the cabin were originally these. Firstly, you must own the machine. And secondly, recruit a person who can use record magic and make them my assistant. So I didn't expect anything from you because both seemed impossible. Hiss, said Qual, lighting a cigarette. The first condition is already met, and the second depends on how closely related you are to the record magician. Is it possible? I think it's possible if you are the assistant, not them. Well, title doesn't matter much. Anyway, once they confirm my abilities, the question is to help each other. Jean thought Valeria would never do that, but nodded. Rather, Jean imagined Qual volunteering as Valeria's assistant. Qual reached out to Jean. There will be no greater luck than having me in your life, in your family, and throughout your faction. Jean responded by taking his hand. I will serve you diligently in my own way. What do you mean, in my own way? It means I welcome you to the Vamel Alliance. Although Qual protested that he wasn't officially part of it yet, Jean effortlessly subdued him and threw him into the mouth of the mortal toad. Chapter 588. Jean was a little worried because Qual had a rather gruff personality, but surprisingly, as soon as he arrived, he seemed to get along well with Jin's companions. Of course, Qual had a belligerent side, but Jin's companions quickly accepted him because he showed a tough but affectionate side with the children. Young master, it seems like everyone misses Murakanim. Gilly spoke as she sat next to Jean. She and Jean watched as the children teased Qual for looking like a bandit or a bandit leader. Murakan. When Murakanim was around, Tychon always felt lively. He took care of everything and played with the children. I should say that Dr. Qual seems to be taking on the role. Although he seems to get along with the children, it's only been 3 hours since Qual came here. Gilly's eyes widened at those words. Now that she thought about it, it was as Jean had said. In the last 3 hours, all Qual had done with his companions was name Amela as his assistant, propose the same role to Beres, only to be flatly rejected, and exchange a few words with the others. Qual even received a slap from Quicantle for teasing her, but he didn't seem fazed. Oh well, that's true. I guess you miss Murakan, Gilly. Jean understood it that way. It feels a little weird to think that these two could be lovers. The two were practically like parents to Jean, so whenever there was a strange atmosphere between them, it made Jean feel uneasy. Cringe, is that what the kids call it these days? Alright then. I'll go take care of the pending tasks, young master. As Gilly disappeared, Jean let out an ironic smile. I wonder if Murakan will be okay. Murakan was currently absent to play the role of Misha. He was taking over Soderet's duties in her place. Jean had no idea what exactly he was doing. Since it was a task from God, he assumed it was about maintaining the balance and order of the world. Not even Misha fully understood everything he was handling. This was beyond mortal perception. Amelanim. This time, Amelia, dressed in a round bush, rolled up to Jean. Speak, sir. You've had a long talk with Qual before. What do you think? About his abilities? Yes. Even if there were 10 of me, I wouldn't be able to keep up with Dr. Qual's little finger. Is it that much? Technically, he's hundreds of years ahead of us. We've decided to study Black King Canyon number 1 together, and he's already solved some problems that I couldn't solve. However, it will take some time to perfect it. He won't take long to surpass Kozek's main cannon. Oh, indeed. Qual's claim that meeting him was the greatest fortune was not an exaggeration. Amela, a former researcher even before becoming a mercenary, seemed to show respect for Qual's abilities. It's really crazy that the Zippel clan discarded that old man. It's their biggest mistake. There was another reason why Qual was abandoned in the remote area. Zippel mistakenly believed that they had already utilized most of his skills. They weren't entirely wrong until recently. It was true that Qual was a genius among geniuses from the start. However, his engineering skills increased in real time. Just as he realized he was a descendant of Genesto, some of the sealed inherited memories were being released, weakening the power of history after the War of the Sword Emperor Castle. Great Knight Lokia Genesto has set up a mechanism to ensure that memory continues to be passed down to her descendants. Is that so? The inheritance of memory. Jean had already first-hand experienced that it was possible thanks to the help of the brothers from the Tribe of Legends. Hister also left behind magic, mana, records, and memories to his descendants through the Temple of Succession. Similarly, Genesto was achieving the transmission of memories through some method. Zippel was completely unaware of that fact. Still, Zippel should have either killed Qual or taken special care of him. Zippel would have done so if they hadn't suffered a major blow in the War of the Sword Emperor Castle. It won't be long before they come looking for Qual again. So, Amalanim, watch over Qual. You must prevent him from leaving Tychon. Are you telling me to confine him for research? Something like that. Don't worry about that. He's one to stay locked up in the research lab even when told to go out. But I'll make sure to pay more attention to him. There was a lot of work to be done through Qual, and all of that will have better results than when Rosa chose the Prophet. Originally, I planned to use them through the Prophet. However, this time I have changed my mind by suspending Joshua from the role of flag-bearer. I will postpone negotiations with the Prophet. During that time, show that you have a method superior to the Prophet. If I fail, you will hand them over to the Prophet. You say this, acting matriarch. The machine and blueprints of the battleship. Rosa kept insisting on handing them over to the Prophet at any time. If Zippel hadn't suffered such a major blow during the War of the Sword Emperor Castle, my mother would have taken those things away from me immediately. Although Rosa never told Jean, she actually wanted to negotiate with the Prophet right now to complete the machine and battleship fleet. She had an internal change after the war, like Qual. Still, there was only one reason why Rosa was delaying negotiations. This was because the family's power was weakening. If any variables arose in negotiations with the Prophet, she would have fewer means to deal with those issues. It is still unknown how much power the Prophet possesses. Only deducing from the fact that she has not directly exerted her influence over the Garden of Swords can it be deduced that she cannot overthrow the clan as she desires. But for now, please disguise Qual with Golden Snow products. Amalanim, get ready to go out. Where are we going? There are people who have to pay for their sins. If they try to cheat me again, I won't have the means to investigate, so I need both of your help. Kinselo headquarters. As always, Kinselo executives watched Anas and Bouvard running around with distressed eyes. Ronhyran, I never thought he would become a Genesis Knight. Even in Margiella's always cheerful face, there was evident deep concern. She had foreseen Dante's death long before the War of the Sword Emperor Castle even began. Not only that, but she also knew how the balance of the world would change after Gleek awakened from the White Stone. However, all the futures Margiela foresaw had turned out to be completely wrong. All because Ron reached the realm of the Genesis Knight at the last moment. I don't feel well. Making G-Nim join us seems like something that will never happen in the future. Did you confirm the future with your ability? Zephyrin asked, and Margiela shook her head. G-Nim's fate is completely invisible to me. However, now that things have turned out like this, it seems like G-Nim has moved one step further away from us. That little demon is already far away from us. That's not a bad thing. And even if the fate you saw had come out as predicted, wouldn't G-Nim have moved further away from us? He may have lost his mind, but he must have found himself in a situation where he needed our help. A member of the Red Tiger tribe found the executives in a hurry. What's going on? Barak asked as he looked at the breathless red tiger running carelessly. Jean Runcandle has arrived at the land of the beast men. Hook, hook. He said he's here for the negotiations you mentioned last time. The red tiger member was out of breath after running for so long. And the reason he was running was no different. Well, if you don't come to the Yuka Yuka market before noon, I'll consider the negotiation non-existent and leave. The executive's eyes all reached the clock hanging on the wall at the same time. There were only 2 minutes left until noon. Even if Zephyrin immediately transformed into her true form and flew at full speed over the roof of the headquarters. It was impossible to arrive on time. Ha! Is that arrogant trying to humiliate us again like this? No, Barak Nim. Let's send a letter to Tychon. If Jean Runcandle doesn't return to the land of the beast men by the end of today, we'll attack Tychon immediately. For some reason, Barak tried to respond positively to Joe's shout. But the moment Margiela shook her head, Barak scolded Joe. Shut up, Joe. Right, Joe Nim. Jean Nim never speaks empty words. If it's not now, we won't be able to see the machine and the blueprints again. The blueprints of the battleship and the machine were also very important to Kinslow. In the first place, they also suffered considerable damage in the Soda Desert and tried to gain them. Margiela soon made a decision. I'll open the door. I'm sorry, leader. As she waved her hand in the air, a huge steel door suddenly formed in the middle of the conference room. And at that moment, the Kinslow leader, who was lying in the inner room of the headquarters, had no choice but to vomit. Blood once again. If I get involved with that demon, my master's recovery will be delayed. Let's go together. All the executives went through the steel door that Margiela had opened. As soon as they arrived at the Yuka Yuka market, they could see Jean holding a pocket watch. 11:59 and 57 seconds a.m. What a pity. If you had arrived just 4 seconds late, there would have been no conversation between you and me. It seems that the objects we acquired in the Soda Desert are very necessary for you too. It's been a while. Jean Nim, how have you been? Margiela forced a smile. I don't think we're so close as to ask about each other's well-being, Margiela. I also believe so, Jean Nim. We were in a hurry and couldn't come with the engineers, so I'm sure you'll understand. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fun for both parties. When Zephyrin gritted her teeth, Jean snorted. Fine, I can understand that part. But you're the ones accused of the crime. Did you know Gleek could awaken? Even if we did, what's the problem? It's just that our intelligence surpassed yours. We're not close enough to exchange greetings, let alone allies, so there was no need to share that information. You're right. Since we're not allies, I preferred to blame you for the crimes. In fact, I didn't need to share with you the items we acquired in the Soda Desert. Therefore, there's one more condition for this negotiation. If you want to see the items, explain how Vermont found Timar's body. Jean finished his sentence with a stern expression. Chapter 589. Ha ha ha! What are you talking about? Did the Vermont imperial family find the body of the first patriarch of the Runcandle? Margiela rolled her eyes to the side and said, Don't pretend you don't know. You surely had that information. Well, what do you base such a claim on? In the past, Margiela visited the Garden of Swords with Barak and informed Jean that the imperial family was searching for Timar's tomb. At that time, Margiela said that if Jean joined Kinslow, she would tell him why they were looking for Timar's tomb. Naturally, Jean flatly refused and later found out the purpose of the imperial family and the fact that they already possessed part of Timar's body without Kinslow's help. Intuition. At Jin's curt response, the expressions of Kinslow's executives wrinkled. I thought Jean Nim is a very rational, pragmatic, and impressive person, just like my elder brother. But intuition is a word that doesn't suit you, Jean Nim, right? Miss Margiela, this devil is originally that kind of person. Do you know how much trouble I've had because of his fiery temper? Said Bouvard. This guy is the Jean Runcandle that our friend Bouvard cursed so much about. I'm Anas Caligo, the princess of the Caligo family, and I love sweet potato croquettes. I challenge you. How many can you eat? What? How many sweet potato croquettes can you eat at once? Probably 5 at most. I can eat the whopping 500. It'll be a massacre. Haha. Enough, Anas. Listen carefully, inferior human. If my uni hadn't stopped me, you'd be dead. Suddenly, Jean remembered that Amala might have been among those idiots. His head throbbed for some reason when he thought that if it had been Amala, she would have fit in well among them. You have more interesting friends since the last time I saw you. At Jin's sarcastic response, Bishkal's face seemed to redden more, almost as if it were about to explode. And you said it's not like me to propose based on intuition? I guess you misunderstood me. Whether it's my intuition or anything else, it doesn't matter. What matters is that if you don't release information about the imperial family, you can't examine the objects I brought. Haha, you're going too far again. How are we supposed to know how they obtained Timar's body? If you don't know, you should. Find out, Bouvard. I think you're the one who wants to analyze the blueprints and the machine the most among Kinzalo. Since we shouldn't waste time, it would be good if you told me later if you really don't know. Then I'll leave immediately. Saying this, Jean took out a machine and a blueprint from his pocket and waved it in front of Kinzalo's executives. Murakan often said that gentlemen had a very unpleasant side. But I think it's the same case right now. This guy, whether in the cockpit or now. There seems to be something inhuman about roasting people. While Jean smiled cheerfully, his companions pondered on those things. Kinzalo's executives struggled to contain their boiling emotions. Zephyrin? It seems Margiela and you are the commanders, except the leader. Our vice-leader is Bishkal Ivlianos, said Barakt with a twisted expression. With Zephyrin's arrival, Barakt felt a slight crisis in his position. Is that so? Whoever the leader is, decide quickly. Time is money. Haven't you heard that saying? Wow, today's Nim is somewhat unfavorable. I don't need to favor you. Why are you doing this? Have you forgotten how my good friend and I helped you? Nim, I've forgotten all that. But I remember everything you did to the Holy Kingdom and the Sword Emperor Castle. Margiela's eyes smiled, but there was malice in them. After a moment of contemplation, she finally decided to accept Jin's proposal. Nim, first of all, we really don't know how the imperial family got the body of the first Runcandle patriarch. Then, goodbye. Instead, we know what part of Timar's body is in their possession. If I tell you this, will you share information about the objects? Tell me right away. Intimidation at its finest. Curse it. Margiela, is there any reason to listen? Nim, I don't know what you believe in and you're poking your nose into it again? This is Kinzalo's land. Even if we just entertained the idea of having bad intentions, wiping you out would be a piece of cake. Of course, there's something I believe in. Mort. Bong. As Jean shouted, Mort and Cirrus, who had been hiding nearby, appeared. First, Jean and his companions rode Mort to find the land of the Beastmen. Thank you, Lady Cirrus. And to Mort, I wouldn't have come here without some security measures, Zephyrin. TCH. And this is just a security measure. Do you think you can take us down if you set your mind to it? It's an exaggeration. Jean wiped his smile and began to reveal his energy. As he did so, vibrations occurred in the area, and a blue lightning spread in all directions. Members of the Red Tiger tribe and the White Wolf tribe, patrolling or waiting near the market, sank to the ground, faltering. He's grown. Of course, Barakt didn't flinch at all at the aura of the tribe of legends spread by Jean, but he was shocked by the fact that Jean possessed an aura different from what he remembered. The pace of growth was too fast. Although he was only 20 years old, Jean was emitting an aura close to 10 stars. Even the flow of energy is unusual. Chaos energy is also mixed in and, given the right opportunity, is in a state where it can explosively become stronger at any moment. Did he transcend during the War of the Sword Emperor Castle? Jean glared at Zephyrin. Also, you're in a situation where you can't use your strength properly. That's why Talarisnim hit you unilaterally in Tychon. Seeing that the leader hasn't come out now, you won't be able to use his power either. Am I wrong? Oh, Zephyrin, he's right. Oops. Then the one who punched the Grand Duchess in the chin at that time. Ugh. Bishkal covered Bouvard's mouth, and Bianca covered Ainas's. So, if you want to fight, I'll accept it. You're too arrogant, Jean. How will you deal with the aftermath afterwards? I guess you've forgotten that this land of the Beastmen is very close to Jean Kingdom. Jean Kingdom is Runcandle's territory, so if a fight breaks out here, we'll have to hold out until support from my family arrives. It seems that Stamnim has something in store for you. Of course, since they've just used the leader's power again, they can't really attack. In the end, as always, Zephyrin had no choice but to give in. Now that you seem to understand the situation a bit, let's get into details, Miss Margiela. The part of Timar's body that the Imperial family possesses is an arm. Valeria's record magic only knew that a part of Timar's body was being used. Jean felt his heart sink upon hearing the direct name arm, instead of such an ambiguous expression. It means that even after death, his body was torn apart and used in various ways. Arm. Yes, his left arm. As you may already know, the Imperial family is trying to complete the transformation of demon men through it. How did you know they had a left arm? Because we made a deal with the Imperial family. Indeed, it was recognized by the leader's ability. Jean didn't bother pointing out that part. For what we've seen, Timar Runcandle's body itself is no different from a collection of ancient magic information from his prime days. Because the deal went sour, we didn't have the chance to analyze it properly. Valeria had also hoped that Timar's body would be a collection of ancient magic information. You're not going to ask how to prove this, are you? At Zephyrin's words, Jean nodded. I'm not that distant a person. How did I know that the Imperial family had Timar's body? Jean-Nim, I don't think you even tortured the Emperor. After all, is it because the record magician is with you? Jean didn't answer and pocketed the objects he had taken out again. Why are you storing them like that, now that you've found out? Don't think you can escape. If so, this won't end with just words. No matter what damage we suffer, we'll fight. Ah, don't misunderstand me. I just stored them because it's uncomfortable to hold them. The conversation window is still open. Originally, I was only planning to listen to information about Timar's body, but just now, another annoying crime was added. You're going to wipe us out. What can I do? I don't feel well after hearing that. Hey, 12th flag bearer of Runcandle. Calm down. I can't tolerate this anymore. Barak spoke as he drew the large sword hanging from his back. Margiela smiled as she grabbed him by the arm. Uncle Barak, it's okay. Let's listen to him. It seems today is the day Jean-Nim has a lot of questions for us. And Jean-Nim, it would be good if you remembered my appearance again today. This pathetic effort to resolve things by talking, let's try to make the most of it. Let's make an effort, okay? Alright, this is the last question. Kinselo, what is your ultimate goal? In his previous life, Jean never felt curious about Kinselo's goal. Jean only thought of them as a third-rate terrorist organization that began causing some problems worldwide shortly before his death in his past life. However, the current Kinselo was on another level. To be precise, Kinselo had this power back then, but they probably concealed it. Many things have changed thanks to my regression. Margiela's and Jin's gazes met. As far as I know, your goal is to elevate your leader as the sole king of the world. But I believe that's not all. That's it. It's all about making your leader the sole king of the world. So, is world domination your purpose? Then Margiela smiled and replied, I mentioned it once, didn't I? We just want to create a better world. So instead of the word conquest, I think purification suits us better. Chapter 590. Jean and his companions momentarily doubted if they had heard correctly, questioning their own ears. Until recently, the word purification was not something that could casually come out of the mouths of the notorious group known for various acts of terrorism and espionage. Did Kinselo not stay on the sidelines knowing that Gleek would be awakened? As a result, the world had become contaminated with chaos, and chaos spread among living beings like an epidemic. Jean was so astonished that he was speechless at hearing the word purification. Purification. Yes, purification. Our Kinselo's goal is to make the world more beautiful. Margiela spoke with a confident and vibrant voice, regardless of whether Jean and his companions were scandalized or remained silent. Beside her, Aines and Bouvard nodded as if confirming that this was indeed the case. I knew they were crazy, but I never expected them to go this far as a group. Everyone seemed serious. Margiela even went as far as to imagine a world beautified by Kinzelo's actions, her eyes shining. It seems that the meaning of purification that we know and the meaning of purification that you think are a little different. Probably the same. Haven't you ever thought about it, Jean-Nim? This world is full of pain and unnecessary contradictions. I often think about it. You guys are contributing quite a bit to that kind of environment. Right now, you might see it that way. For fundamental purification, isn't a certain amount of sacrifice and destruction absolutely necessary? Exactly. Setting aside whether it's right or wrong, I'm skeptical about how you plan to achieve such an idealistic utopia. The method isn't that difficult. We'll annihilate all the gods in the world. It's getting more absurd by the minute. Once we eliminate all the gods as planned, our leader will become the sole king of the world. Jin's eyes narrowed. Killing all the gods. Perhaps it wasn't an impossible task for Kinzelo. As Jean knew, the original creator of the demon god orb was Bouvard Gaston. Although they collaborated with Zippel, but the key personnel was Bouvard. The alliance between Kinzelo and Zippel broke down because Zippel used the demon god orb without permission and damaged it in the first place. And the orb had the function of sealing the gods and replicating some of their divine powers. All the demon god orbs I've seen so far have been incomplete. If it's completed, it's highly likely to go beyond sealing the gods and annihilate them. Jean shrugged. Do you and your leader believe that all the evils and contradictions of the world are the responsibility of the gods? Not necessarily, but most of the responsibility lies with them. To describe our great cause in a more splendid and concise way, it's like a revolution against the gods. Jean felt a headache coming on. Zippel and Kinzelo. One wants to become the sole victor of the world through the power of the gods, and the other wants to kill all the gods and purify the world. They're both insane. A bitter laugh escaped him as he realized that such beings were in charge of a major axis of world power. Well, if you think about it, not even Runcandle wants to kill or use the gods. In the end, it's not so different. They just want to defeat Zippel and become the world conqueror. Perhaps the goals of the major factions are more cliché than strange. In reality, it doesn't matter who wants what. The crucial point is whether they have the power to achieve it. I've heard your goals well. The reason why people, dragons, and demons gathered in Kinzelo even after hearing such an empty dream. Maybe it's not just because they're stupid. Jean paused. It tickles, Miss Aines. Meanwhile, watching Bouvard and Aines laughing and talking, Jean thought that stupid people might have gathered in Kinzelo. The power of Kinzelo must be extraordinary for them to believe in the idea of eliminating the gods and purifying the world. At the time of the terrorist attack on Sword Emperor Castle, Kinzelo's leader displayed transcendental power. He possesses divine abilities, such as teleporting through a steel door and repairing a half-destroyed Grenille at once, in addition to brute strength. Moreover, the leader performed all these feats in an imperfect state. What is the identity of your leader? A demon king, or an equivalent existence? Jin's companions assumed this to be the leader's identity. Currently, not only the Vamal Alliance but the entire world was curious about the identity of Kinzelo's leader. After Kinzelo emerged as a third faction, many people deduced the leader's identity, but he remained veiled. In particular, the number of people tracking down the leader's identity had rapidly increased in recent times. Suddenly, Jean felt strange about that fact. The fact that Kinzelo had the means to subdue Gleek was not revealed to the public after the War of Sword Emperor Castle. But why have people suddenly started searching for the leader's identity after the war ended? When his thoughts reached that point, Jin's eyes widened. Because Zippel's manipulation of history has weakened since the War of Sword Emperor Castle. The fact that Kinzelo's leader was also a person affected by the power of history was expected back in the time of the Sword Emperor Castle terrorist attack. That demon looks familiar to me. Are you talking about the leader of Kinzelo? I'm sure. I've met him. Who is it? Are you saying that he once fought with the brothers of the Tribe of Legends? That, I don't know, but I'm sure. He looks familiar to me. Rimpa, who was summoned at that moment, was also convinced that she had met Kinzelo's leader, but she couldn't exactly remember who he was. Not only Rimpa but also Murakan. From the recorded video left by Sodaret, Murakan and the leader seemed to know each other well, but he did not recognize the leader. Margiela smiled. Jin Nim, you may not know it, but you actually have a deep connection with our leader. You've received help from the leader several times. There were cases where you used the leader's belongings to save your life. The leader's belongings? The white whale Luna Run candle long ago. She would have given you a gift, Jin Nim. Instantly, a chill ran down Jin's spine. Oh, kid, that thing around your neck. Could it be from Orgel, the Demon Beast King? That's right. Hey, you've got a precious birthday gift. 1,000 years ago, there were dozens of kings who gave their lives to get it. Who is Orgel, the Demon Beast King? Yes, he's a great demon who was active in my era. I can recognize it at a glance. It must have been given by the owner of that powerful energy before, so it's like winning a life. Congratulations, kid. The pendant of the Demon Beast King, Orgel. Yes, the owner of that pendant is our leader, Demon Beast King Orgel. He is Kinzelo's leader. Orgel was the original owner of the pendant Jin wore, and he was the lover of the witch, Hilurum, and the one who gave her her ruby cat, Shuri. And in the recorded video Jin saw, he was also the person who appeared when Murakan tried to kill the madman Timar. Contrary to the recorded video, in the present, when Murakan met him for the first time, he mentioned that it was he who prevented Mad Murakan from killing Timar. The contradiction between what he said and the recorded video, the fact that Murakan didn't recognize him, and the fact that even Murakan and Quicantel, who knew about Orgel all along, couldn't relate him to Kinzelo's leader. Jin intuitively knew that Orgel's history was manipulated in a very complex way. Or, perhaps, the contradictions in Orgel's history were the result of his resistance against Zippel's manipulation. In fact, Orgel constantly resisted the manipulation of history even before his power was weakened by Gleek. That's why Murakan and Quicantel remember Orgel even though they don't recognize him. Lunanim cut down one of the demons to get the leader's pendant, and she gave it to you. This is what people usually call destiny. If the leader hadn't entrusted the pendant to someone else at that time, it wouldn't have reached you. Jin didn't reply to that. So you probably wouldn't have received help from Lunanim, and you would have been killed by Andre Zippel on the remote island of Vermont, Jin Nim. We wouldn't have had any chance to meet and have this conversation. Jin's mind was filled with complicated thoughts. So, could you feel a little grateful to our leader? It's fate, created by the leader. Let's say the Demon Beast King Orgel is a great being who can decide fate. Even if I managed to survive from Andre on that island thanks to him, it was ultimately for your sake, not mine. Why do you always think in such convoluted ways? If I had been absorbed by the demon god orb at that time, Zippel would have finished off that dog-shaped object before you. Well, that's true. No matter what others say, what saved me that day was my elder sister Luna, not Orgel. She decided my fate, so I hope you don't put his name while writing a novel. It's very distasteful. Margiela clapped her hands. Has another crime been added? Without a word, Jean took out the machine and the blueprints again. Bouvard, who had been playfully interacting with Aina's all the while, suddenly focused on the objects. Zephyrin, do you remember what I said in Taiken last time? Discussions about object analysis must be conducted with both parties present, and all information Kinzelo has obtained must be shared with us. Jean remained consistently demanding and irritable with Kinzelo to the end. Hey, Grand Duchess, have you grasped any of your weak points? Even if we stay below, I think we stay too far below. I remember. Go ahead. I'll give you 3 hours to analyze. Bouvard Gaston, only you come forward. The rest stay back and wait. Bouvard snorted excitedly and approached Jin's group. Amela and the disguised Qual set up the prepared workstation, and immediately the three began analyzing together. Kinzelo's executive had faith in Bouvard. They believed that no engineer, whoever they were, could surpass Bouvard's skills. But as soon as Quall saw Bouvard's analysis, he coughed once, classifying Bouvard's engineering knowledge far below his own. The cough was a signal. Before entering the territory of the Beastmen, Quall had pre-installed engineering traps in the objects, and Kinzelow's side had completely failed to recognize them.